She's trying to liquidate your entire portfolio while you're on morphine. This isn't about investing, Mr. Harrison. This is theft, my accountant Gerald said, planting himself between my hospital bed and the door like a guardian angel in a rumpled suit. My daughter Veronica stood frozen in the doorway, her Hermès briefcase worth more than most people's cars clutched in manicured fingers, and her face cycled through expressions like a slot machine before landing on indignant rage. How dare you accuse me of stealing from my own father? But Gerald just smiled, the same smile I'd seen when he'd caught embezzlement at 3 different companies, and held up his phone, which had been recording for the past 47 minutes. Veronica's entrance had been preceded by a flurry of activity I'd been too drugged to fully process. The heart attack had hit me 5 days ago. Massive, the doctor said, lucky to be alive. Between the pain medications and the procedures, I'd drifted in and out of consciousness like a boat on rough seas. But through it all, Gerald Hoffman had been there, this peculiar little man who'd managed my finances for 15 years. You should go home, I'd told him on day 2, when I'd surfaced long enough to recognize him. This isn't your job. With respect, Mr. Harrison, protecting your assets is exactly my job, he'd replied, settling into the visitor's chair with his laptop. Besides, someone needs to keep your books while you're indisposed. I'd thought he was being overly cautious. Gerald had always been protective of my money. It's what made him excellent at his job. But lying here now, watching my daughter's perfectly composed face crack like expensive porcelain, I realized he'd sensed something I'd been too blind to see. Recording without consent is illegal, Veronica snapped, regaining her composure. I'll have you arrested. Minnesota is a one-party consent state, Gerald replied calmly. I consent to recording myself. And everything I've captured is perfectly legal, including the conversation you had in the hallway with someone named Bradley about how your father won't last the week, and you need to move fast. I tried to sit up, but the monitors started beeping in protest. Veronica? She rushed to my bedside, suddenly the devoted daughter. Daddy, don't strain yourself. Your heart is functioning at 85% capacity and improving daily, Gerald interrupted. According to Dr. Martinez, who I spoke with this morning, Mr. Harrison is expected to make a full recovery. You spoke to my father's doctor? Veronica's voice pitched higher. Mr. Harrison designated me as medical proxy 2 years ago, along with financial power of attorney. Didn't you know? Gerald's innocent tone didn't match his sharp eyes. I assumed family would be informed of such things. I hadn't told Veronica. Our relationship had been strained since her mother's death 10 years ago, reduced to obligatory holiday visits and birthday cards that always seemed to mention her latest financial venture that needed backing. I'd kept her at arm's length, and apparently, I'd been right to. Daddy, Veronica said, her voice honey-sweet now. I've been so worried about you. I flew in from Miami the moment I heard. I've been working with the best investment advisors to ensure your money is protected while you recover. My money is in a diversified portfolio earning 12% annually, I managed to croak out. What needs protecting? She produced a folder from her briefcase, laying it on my bed tray. The market is volatile, Daddy. Bradley, he's a brilliant advisor, Harvard MBA, has identified safer investments. Treasury bonds, stable funds. We could protect your capital from any downturns. I was foggy, but not that foggy. Treasury bonds yield 3%. You want to move me from 12% to 3%. It's about safety. It's about liquidity, Gerald cut in. He pulled out his tablet, showing me something. These investment transfers would cash out your entire portfolio. The stocks, the real estate investment trusts, the municipal bonds. $3.2 million in liquid assets, transferred to a safer investment account that happens to be jointly owned by Veronica and someone named Bradley Whitmore. Joint ownership for oversight. Veronica protested. To protect Daddy's interests. Mr. Whitmore, Gerald continued, scrolling through his tablet, is quite interesting. Currently under SEC investigation for running a Ponzi scheme. Owes $1.7 million to various creditors. Has been romantically linked to Ms. Harrison for the past 8 months. Should I continue? My chest tightened, not from the heart this time, but from rage and disappointment. Veronica, tell me he's wrong. Her face was a study in calculation. I could see her weighing options, deciding whether to double down or retreat. Finally, she straightened her spine and went with option 3, guilt. You don't understand what it's like, she said, tears suddenly appearing. Being Kenneth Harrison's daughter. Everyone expects money, connections, bailouts. Do you know how hard it is to make it on my own with everyone knowing I have a rich father? So you decided to steal it instead? My voice was stronger now, fueled by adrenaline. It's not stealing. I'm your daughter. Your only family. That money will be mine anyway. When I'm dead, I finished. Were you planning to wait, or were you hoping the heart attack would finish me off? Don't be dramatic. I love you, Daddy. You love my money, Gerald corrected. Which is why you've been calling Mr. Harrison's investment firms for the past 3 days, claiming to have power of attorney. Fortunately, they know to verify such claims with me. I studied my daughter, really looked at her for the first time in years. Designer clothes, expensive jewelry, the kind of grooming that costs thousands monthly. All on a marketing manager's salary that I knew barely covered her rent. The transfers, I said slowly. What would happen once my money was in this joint account? Gerald answered for her. Based on the pattern from Mr. Whitmore's other victims, the funds would be invested in his company, which would then declare bankruptcy. Investors would lose everything. Mr. Whitmore would relocate. Costa Rica seems popular, with whatever he could hide offshore. And Veronica would claim she was a victim too, duped by a con man. Grieving daughter taken advantage of during a family crisis. Gerald looked at her with something like pity. It's actually quite clever. Evil but clever. Veronica's tears had dried up. You can't prove any of that. I don't have to, Gerald said. I just have to prevent it, which I've done. Mr. Harrison, would you like me to call security? I looked at my daughter, this stranger wearing my daughter's face. When had she become this? When had I lost her so completely that she saw me as nothing but a bank account with a failing heart? No, I said finally. But Veronica, you're leaving. Now. And you're not coming back. Daddy. I'll call my lawyer tomorrow. You'll get what your mother wanted you to have. The house in Duluth and $50,000. Nothing more. That's nothing. The house is worthless, and $50,000 won't even cover my debts. Then I suggest you learn to live within your means. I was exhausted now, the adrenaline fading. Or find someone else to con. But it won't be me. She grabbed the investment papers, shoving them back into her briefcase. You'll regret this. When you're alone in some nursing home, when you need family. I'll have the family I choose, I said, glancing at Gerald. Not the one that chose to rob me. She stormed out, her heels clicking angrily on the hospital tile. We could hear her in the hallway, already on the phone with Bradley, voice shrill with panic. Gerald quietly closed the door, muffling her voice. Then he returned to his chair, pulling out his laptop like nothing had happened. Thank you, I said simply. He shrugged, already pulling up spreadsheets. It's my job, Mr. Harrison. Sitting in a hospital for 5 days isn't your job. Protecting me from my own daughter isn't your job. He looked up then, this small, unassuming man who'd just saved me from financial ruin. 15 years ago, you took a chance on an accountant nobody else would hire. Fresh out of prison for whistleblowing, blacklisted by every major firm. You gave me a second chance when no one else would. I remembered now. Gerald had exposed embezzlement at his previous company and somehow ended up being the one charged with financial crimes. He'd beaten the charges but lost everything in the process. You were innocent, I said. And brilliant. Best hire I ever made. You were the only one who believed that. So yes, Mr. Harrison, protecting you is exactly my job. From bad investments, from market downturns, and from family members who see you as a piggy bank rather than a person. A nurse came in to check my vitals, frowning at the readouts. Mr. Harrison, your blood pressure is elevated. You need to rest. I will, I promised. Then to Gerald. Can you do me one more favor? Anything. Call my lawyer. I want to update my will. And I want to create a trust, something Veronica can't touch, can't challenge. I want to leave enough to take care of the people who actually care about me. Gerald smiled, a real smile this time. I'll set up the meeting for tomorrow. And Gerald, bill me for every hour you've been here. At double your usual rate. Hazard pay for dealing with family drama. That's not necessary. It is. You're not my employee anymore. You're family. The kind you choose. He ducked his head, embarrassed by the emotion. I'll get those documents ready. As he typed, I closed my eyes, listening to the familiar sound of his keyboard. The heart monitor beeped steadily, reassuringly. My heart was healing. My relationship with my daughter was dead. But I was alive, my fortune intact, protected by the most unlikely guardian angel. Over the next few days, as I recovered, the full extent of Veronica's plan came to light. She'd been positioning herself for months, creating a paper trail that suggested I was developing dementia. She'd hired a psychiatrist to declare me incompetent based on her reports of my confusion and paranoia. The investment transfer was just the first step. The full plan involved taking control of all my assets, not just the liquid ones. Gerald had suspected something when she'd started calling his office, fishing for information about my holdings. He'd started documenting everything, building a defensive case without my knowledge. When I had the heart attack, he'd stationed himself in my room like a sentry, knowing she'd see it as her opportunity. "How did you know she'd bring the papers today?" I asked him. "The doctors mentioned you'd be lucid today, probably ready for discharge tomorrow. If she was going to make a move, it had to be while you were still vulnerable but alert enough to sign documents." Classic con timing. The lawyer came, documents were signed, protections put in place. I created the Kenneth Harrison Foundation, with Gerald as co-trustee, dedicated to financial literacy and protecting seniors from financial abuse. It felt appropriate. Veronica tried calling a few times, leaving messages that cycled between threats and pleas. I had them blocked. Bradley Whitmore was arrested 2 weeks later when another scheme collapsed. Veronica claimed she'd been duped, but the investigators found evidence of her participation going back years. She fled to Mexico before charges could be filed. I was discharged after 10 days, my heart scarred but functional. Gerald drove me home, helped me settle in, then tried to leave. "Where are you going?" I asked. "Home. You're safe now, Mr. Harrison. My job's done." "Your job," I said firmly, "is to come to dinner on Sundays, remember birthdays, and occasionally watch a game with me. That's what family does." He stood in my doorway, this man who'd saved me in more ways than one, and for the first time in our 15-year relationship, I saw him tear up. I'd like that," he said quietly. "Good. Now get out of here before we both get emotional. But I'll see you Sunday. Pot roast at 6. He left, and I settled into my recliner, looking around my empty house. Empty but not lonely. I'd lost a daughter but gained something more valuable. Proof that family isn't about blood or obligation or inheritance. It's about showing up when it matters, protecting those who've earned your loyalty, and choosing love over greed. My heart might be damaged, but it was still beating. And now I knew exactly who deserved a place in it. The investment papers Veronica had tried to get me to sign became evidence in her fraud case. The recording Gerald made protected several other elderly clients from similar schemes. And every Sunday, without fail, Gerald shows up for dinner, where we talk about everything except money. Because real family, I've learned, is priceless.